Good evening, church family, and thank you for joining us for our first devotion for this week as we're building up to Good Friday. Thank you for joining us this evening. So I know that I've been whipping up some supper, and maybe you guys have already eaten, or maybe you're waiting to eat too. So our house is filled with many smells. Like I know that I've used a couple of spices today. So we've got rosemary that's going around in our house that smells lovely. And we've maybe got a little bit of ginger. Yes, ginger you can smell. And then one of the strongest smells that you can smell in our house at the moment is because it's quite a cold week that we've had, we're going to be having some curry, and this is quite a potent smell. But tonight I'm not talking about smells that we can eat. Tonight there is a little bit more of an expensive smell that I want us to really think about. And that is this smell that we read about in the Bible that is an expensive oil, almost like a perfume. Tonight we're looking at the first start to our Holy Week, and one of the first stories we read about is how Mary anoints Jesus' feet. If you remember yesterday, if you listened to our Sunday message, you would have been reminded that it was a time where people were gathering to come to Passover, and it was a time where Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey. And this is where we start our next story for this week, is from the Gospel, again, the Gospel of Matthew. We're reading from chapter 26. So I'd like for you as a family to join with me as we read the story this evening. Let us begin our reading this evening. The time was coming to celebrate the Passover. Every year, the Jewish people gathered together to remember a special event that happened long ago. When God's people were slaves in Egypt, God did great things to rescue his people. God showed the Pharaoh that he was in charge and that Pharaoh should let God's people go. God had used Moses to lead his people out of Egypt into the promised land. God did not want his people to forget that time, so every year the Jews had a feast. Many Jews traveled to Jerusalem to get ready for this special time. 6 days before the Passover feast began, Jesus went to the town of Bethany. Bethany was near Jerusalem, and Jesus' friend Lazarus lived there with his sisters, Mary and Martha. Lazarus was the man that Jesus had just risen from the dead. Jesus went to his friend Simon's house for a meal. Jesus was reclining at the table when Mary, Lazarus' sister, came to him. She had a jar of very expensive oil. The oil smelt good, like a good perfume. Mary broke open the jar and poured the oil over Jesus' head. Jesus' disciples were very upset. They thought Mary had wasted the expensive oil. The oil was worth about a year's pay. One of the disciples, Judas, said, "She could have used that oil for those people that are poor." That was an expensive jar of oil. Judas did this, but he did not really care for the poor. He was saying it because he actually had a love for money. In fact, he would soon reveal that he was a thief. They told Mary that she had done the wrong thing, but Jesus spoke up for her. "Leave her alone," he said. "She has done this for me." Then Jesus explained, "You will always have those that are poor around you, but you will not always have me." Jesus said this, that wherever the gospel would be told, people would hear what Mary had done for him. What a great story we read this evening, and what a great challenge we receive as a family is to ask that very simple question, is what expense as us as a family are willing to give up to follow Jesus? There is a simple message this evening, one that is hard to understand, and yet we'll fully understand when we get to Friday. But it's this simple message, that pouring out that very expensive oil over Jesus was not a waste. It was an act of true worship. Allowing Mary to anoint him, Jesus showed that he is much more valuable than anything. Jesus knew that he was soon having to die for our sins. He was soon going to be buried, and yes, soon he would rise again from the dead on the third day.